Accidentally drunk, CEO loses control, a night of unforgettable love. Hi, my beautiful family. Welcome back to Mr. Peter Stories. Before we begin today's journey, let us join in prayer. Dear Heavenly Father, bless this beautiful storytelling family that shares love, hope, and joy through every tale. Guide us as we grow together, making memories and touching hearts. Thank you for bringing us closer through the power of stories. Amen. My dearest family, you know what? Something exciting happened today. Binta has thrown down a playful challenge. She believes in our family's strength, that we can reach 20,000 subscribers in just 18 days. We still need 14,500 more to reach this goal. When she told me this, I smiled and said, I have complete faith in my family. Let's see what magic we can create together. This isn't about pressure, it's all in good fun, a way to celebrate our growing community. If you're already part of our subscribed family, write "done" in the comments, and let's show Binta the incredible power of our bond. With endless love, Mr. Peter, now, shall we dive into today's story? Open your hearts, for another beautiful journey awaits. The Manhattan skyline blazed against the dying autumn sun, a fortress of glass and steel that Vance Sterling had conquered one merger at a time. From the 60th floor of Sterling Tower, the world below looked like a masterfully crafted chessboard, and he'd always prided himself on being 3 moves ahead of everyone else. But tonight, as he pressed his forehead against the cool glass, that legendary control was slipping through his fingers like sand. The crystal tumbler in his hand caught the amber light, half empty now. Or was it his third? Time had become fluid since she'd stormed into his afternoon meeting, armed with evidence that could derail the biggest acquisition of the year, Delaney Blackwood. Even her name felt like a shot of adrenaline straight to his heart. The European markets are closing, Mr. Sterling. His AI assistant's voice purred through hidden speakers. Would you like to review the numbers? Not now, he growled, loosening his Italian silk tie. The fabric felt like a noose tonight, much like the growing tension in his chest whenever she was near. 3 months. She'd been his chief legal officer for only 3 months, and already she'd turned his carefully ordered world upside down. The first time he'd seen her, she'd been arguing with security in the lobby. They hadn't wanted to let her up without an appointment. I don't need an appointment, she'd declared, her voice carrying across the marble expanse. I'm your new CLO, and if Mr. Sterling has a problem with that, he can take it up with the board who unanimously approved my hiring. He'd been returning from a lunch meeting, caught in the grip of another hostile takeover attempt by Silas Warren. The sight of her had stopped him in his tracks. She stood like a warrior queen in a battlefield of corporate drones, chocolate skin glowing with righteous indignation, amber eyes flashing, and a presence that made everyone else fade into the background. Instead of having security remove her, he'd walked right up to her and said, "Prove it." She'd smiled then, a dangerous curve of full lips that should have warned him what was coming. Gladly. Your acquisition strategy for Pacific Tech is fundamentally flawed. Give me 10 minutes and I'll show you how to save this company from a catastrophic mistake. She'd been right, of course. Pacific Tech had been a trap, carefully laid by Warren to drain Sterling Enterprises' resources and leave them vulnerable to a takeover. Delaney had seen through it in hours, when his entire strategy team had missed it for weeks. The sun dipped lower, painting the sky in shades of fire that reminded him of her favorite shade of lipstick. Vance moved to his desk, a massive slab of black marble that dominated one end of his office. Family photos lined one corner. His mother at her last charity gala, his father's stern portrait from before the accident, his younger sister's wedding, all of them looking at him with expectations he'd always met until now. A soft knock interrupted his brooding. "Come in," he called, not turning around. He knew who it was by the whisper of heels against hardwood, the subtle scent of jasmine that always announced her presence. "The board meeting's been moved up," Delaney said, her voice professional, but with an undercurrent that made his spine tingle. "Warren's making his move sooner than we expected." Vance turned then, and immediately regretted it. She wore deep purple today, the color of royalty, and the sight of her made his chest ache. Her hair was swept up in an elegant twist, revealing the graceful line of her neck. A single diamond drop earring caught the dying light, throwing rainbows across her dark skin. "How bad?" he managed, gripping the edge of his desk to keep from reaching for her. Bad enough that Julian called an emergency session. She moved closer, spreading documents across his desk. "Warren's been accumulating shares through shell companies. If we don't stop him by Monday, he'll have enough leverage to force a vote on leadership." The mention of his CFO and oldest friend snapped some sense back into Vance's alcohol-clouded mind. Julian Pierce had been with him since college, the only person who knew all his secrets. Well, almost all of them. The newest one was standing too close, smelling too good, being too damn perfect. "Show me," he said, and she leaned forward to point out the pattern in the trading data. Her arm brushed his, and electricity arced between them. She jerked back as if burned, but not before he saw the flash of something raw and hungry in her eyes. "Sorry," she murmured, but didn't move away. "The pattern's clear once you know what to look for. See these transactions, all routed through different banks, but the timing is too perfect," he finished, following her logic. Their heads bent together over the papers, and he could feel the heat radiating from her body. "He's using an algorithm." "Exactly." She straightened up, smoothing her skirt in a gesture he'd come to recognize as her tell when she was nervous. "But that's not what worries me most. Look at the dates." Vance forced himself to focus on the numbers instead of the way her perfume was making his head spin. The dates. "These started 3 months ago, the same week I was hired." Her voice was quiet now, troubled. "Someone leaked my hiring to Warren before it was announced. He's been planning this since before I walked through that door." The implications hit him like a physical blow. "He wanted you here. Why?" Delaney met his gaze squarely, and the vulnerability there made his heart stutter. "Because he knew I'd find the Pacific tech trap. He knew I'd stop you from making that mistake. And now we look like we're working together," Vance finished, the pieces falling into place. "He's going to use our connection against us." "What connection?" she challenged, but her voice shook slightly. "We're colleagues, nothing more." The lie hung between them like smoke, choking them both. Vance took a step forward, unable to stop himself. "Are we?" She didn't back away. "We can't be anything else. You know that." "Do I?" The bourbon made him reckless, burning away the careful walls he'd built. "Tell me you don't feel this too. Tell me I'm imagining the way you look at me when you think no one's watching." "Vance!" His name on her lips was both warning and plea. "Don't." "Tell me," he insisted, closing the distance between them until he could see the gold flecks in her eyes, count every perfect eyelash. "Tell me you don't lie awake at night thinking about what could happen if we both stopped pretending." Her hands came up to his chest, but whether to push him away or pull him closer, he never found out. The office door burst open, and they jumped apart like guilty teenagers. Julian Pierce stood in the doorway, his usually immaculate appearance showing signs of strain. "We have a problem," he announced, then paused as he registered the tension in the room. "Am I interrupting something?" "No," Delaney said quickly, gathering her papers. "I was just leaving. The board meeting's at 8 tomorrow morning. Don't be late." She fled, leaving the scent of jasmine and regret in her wake. Vance watched her go, his hands clenched into fists at his sides. Julian waited until the door closed behind her before speaking. "You're playing with fire, my friend." "I know. Vance moved back to the window, watching the city lights come alive as darkness fell. What's the problem? Several, actually. Heath Anderson called from Tokyo. The Japanese investors are getting nervous about the Warren situation, and Silas himself was spotted having dinner with someone interesting last night. Who? Cove Martinez, Delaney's best friend and head of our tech division. The crystal tumbler shattered in Vance's hand, sending shards of glass and drops of bourbon flying. A thin line of blood welled up on his palm, but he barely noticed the pain. Julian sighed, moving to the bar to get a first aid kit. You need to get this under control, Vance. The company, your feelings for Delaney, all of it. Warren's playing chess while you're thinking about her lips. I am in control, Vance snapped, but they both knew it was a lie. Control had walked out the door with Delaney Blackwood, leaving him with nothing but wanting and whiskey to keep him warm. As Julian bandaged his hand, the city continued to pulse below them, unaware that its most powerful CEO was falling apart over a woman he couldn't have. Tomorrow would bring the board meeting, Warren's schemes, and another day of pretending he wasn't desperately in love with his chief legal officer. But tonight, in the gathering darkness of his office, Vance Sterling finally admitted the truth to himself. He was already lost, and no amount of power or money could save him now. Chapter 2. Legal Boundaries. Delaney Blackwood's office on the 58th floor was her sanctuary, a place where logic and law could overcome any emotion. At least that's what she told herself as she stared unseeing at the contract before her, the words blurring into meaningless shapes. Her hand trembled slightly as she reached for her coffee, her mind replaying last night's encounter with Vance for the 100th time. The morning sun streamed through her windows, turning the space into a cathedral of light and shadow. She'd earned this office, fought her way up from nothing to become one of the youngest chief legal officers in New York. Yet here she was, acting like a lovesick teenager, because her boss had looked at her with those storm-grey eyes and asked her about connection. Earth to Delaney! The voice shattered her reverie. Cove Martinez stood in her doorway, elegant in a cream pantsuit that complemented her olive skin. Girl, I've been standing here for 5 minutes watching you murder that poor contract with your death stare. I'm focused, Delaney protested, but her best friend's knowing smirk told her she wasn't fooling anyone. Cove swept into the office, closing the door behind her. As head of Sterling Enterprises' tech division, she had clearance to be here, but the gossip she carried was definitely not for public consumption. The whole building's talking about what happened in the executive lounge last night. Delaney's heart stopped. What? Apparently, our mighty CEO nearly broke a conference table when Silas Warren mentioned your name during the investor call. Julian had to end the meeting early because Vance looked ready to commit murder through the video screen. Relief and something darker flooded Delaney's veins. That's ridiculous. Mr. Sterling is just protective of his executives. Mr. Sterling? Cove rolled her eyes, perching on the edge of Delaney's desk. You were calling him Vance last night when you thought no one was around. Heat crept up Delaney's neck. You're supposed to be my friend, not my stalker. I'm your friend, exactly because I stalk you. Cove grinned. Someone has to keep you from drowning in legal briefs and missing the fact that the hottest CEO in Manhattan looks at you like you're water in the desert. It's not like that, Delaney insisted, standing to pace behind her desk. We're colleagues. There are rules, protocols. Protocols, Cove snorted. The man wrote those protocols himself, and I've seen how he looks at you in meetings. He'd burn that rule book if you gave him half a chance. Before Delaney could respond, her office door burst open again. Clover Bennett, their friend from PR, rushed in, her usual composure shattered. Emergency, she announced, her caramel complexion paler than usual. Silas Warren's making a hostile move for the company. The words hit Delaney like a physical blow. What? How? Clover dropped a stack of papers on her desk. My sources at the Financial Times got wind of it. He's been accumulating shares through a network of shell companies, just like you suspected. But that's not the worst part. What's the worst part? Delaney asked, though her legal mind was already racing ahead to the implications. He's claiming insider knowledge of improper relationships between executives. He's threatening to take it to the board unless Vance steps down as CEO. The room spun slightly. Delaney gripped the edge of her desk, her knuckles turning white. He can't prove anything. There's nothing to prove. Isn't there? Clover's voice was gentle. I saw the security footage from last night, Delaney. If I were trying to build a case about inappropriate relationships, delete it, Cove ordered immediately. Whatever you saw, make it disappear. Already done, Clover assured them. But Warren has people everywhere. If I saw it... The implications hung heavy in the air. Delaney sank back into her chair, her mind racing. Last night replayed in her memory, the heat of Vance's body so close to hers, the intensity in his eyes when he demanded she admit their connection. Had someone been watching, recording, setting them up? Clover continued, the charity gala is tonight. Warren will be there, along with half the board and every financial reporter in the city. Whatever move he's planning, it'll happen there. I'm not going, Delaney decided. I'll work late, review the share purchases, find a legal way to block him. You have to go, Cove interrupted. If you don't show up, it'll look like confirmation of everything Warren's implying. Besides, she added with a sly smile, I already picked up your dress from the designer. You're wearing emerald green and Vance Sterling won't know what hit him. That is exactly what we're trying to avoid, Delaney groaned. But she knew her friends were right. Running would only make things worse. A knock at her door made all three women jump. Julian Pierce stood there, his expression unreadable. Ms. Blackwood, do you have a moment? Cove and Clover exchanged glances before making themselves scarce. Julian waited until the door closed behind them before speaking. He's not sleeping, he said without preamble. Barely eating. I've known Vance since college, and I've never seen him like this. Delaney's heart clenched, but she kept her voice steady. What do you want me to do about it? I want you to be sure, Julian replied, his blue eyes intense. Whatever this is between you two, be sure. Because if Warren succeeds, if this company falls, thousands of people lose their jobs. Vance loses everything he's built. And for what? A few heated looks and almost kisses in dark offices. Anger flared in Delaney's chest. You think I don't know what's at stake? You think I haven't spent every night since I got here trying to convince myself that what I feel for him isn't worth the risk? And what do you feel for him? The question hung in the air like smoke. Delaney turned to the window, watching clouds drift past the neighboring skyscrapers. It doesn't matter. The company comes first. That's not what I asked. Julian's voice was surprisingly gentle. Vance Sterling is the most controlled man I've ever met, until you. Whatever power you have over him, please, use it wisely. He left her alone with that thought, and with the growing certainty that she was standing on the edge of something that could either save them all or destroy everything they'd built. Hours later, as the sun began to set, Delaney stood in her private bathroom, staring at her reflection. The emerald silk dress Cove had chosen was a masterpiece, clinging to her curves before flowing to the floor like liquid jade. Her dark skin glowed against the fabric, and she'd left her hair down in a cascade of intricate braids interwoven with tiny crystal beads. Her phone buzzed with a text from Cove. Cars downstairs. Ready to make history? No, Delaney thought, but she gathered her clutch anyway. She wasn't ready for the way Vance would look at her tonight, wasn't ready for Silas Warren's schemes, wasn't ready for the way her whole world seemed to be balancing on the edge of a knife. But ready or not, she had a gala to attend. And somewhere in that glittering crowd, the most powerful man in Manhattan would be waiting for her, his grey eyes stormy with everything they couldn't say. As she stepped into the elevator, Delaney sent up a silent prayer that she was strong enough to resist him, because Julian was right. One wrong move tonight could bring down an empire. And no matter what her heart wanted, she couldn't be the woman who destroyed Vance Sterling. The elevator doors closed on her reflection, and Delaney Blackwood prepared herself for battle. She was a lawyer, after all, and tonight, the most important case of her life would be proving to the world and to herself that she was not in love with her boss, even if that proved to be the biggest lie she'd ever told. Chapter 3. Dangerous Games. The Metropolitan Museum of Art glowed like a jewel against the Manhattan night, its grand steps lined with photographers hoping to catch the city's elite at their most vulnerable. Vance Sterling's private car pulled up to the entrance, and camera flashes erupted like lightning. He adjusted his bow tie, a familiar mask of corporate confidence sliding into place as his driver opened the door. Inside, the great hall had been transformed into a wonderland of crystal and candlelight. White roses cascaded from ceiling-high arrangements, their perfume mixing with the scent of money and power that always lingered at these events. Vance accepted a glass of champagne from a passing waiter, scanning the crowd with predatory focus. "She's not here yet," Julian murmured, appearing at his elbow in an impeccably tailored tuxedo. "But Warren is, northwest corner, holding court with 3 board members." Vance's grip tightened on his glass as he spotted his nemesis. Silas Warren stood like a snake among sheep, his silver hair gleaming under the chandeliers as he charmed the very people who would soon vote on the company's future. Their eyes met across the room, and Warren raised his glass in mocking salute. "Steady," Julian warned, noting the muscle jumping in Vance's jaw. "We're here to play chess, not start a war." "What if I'm tired of playing games?" Vance's voice was low, dangerous. "He's threatening everything I've built, everything my father built before me." "Is that really what you're worried about losing?" Before Vance could answer, a ripple went through the crowd. He turned toward the entrance and forgot how to breathe. Delaney stood at the top of the marble stairs, a vision in emerald silk that made her dark skin glow like polished bronze. Her hair fell in an intricate cascade of braids, studded with crystals that caught the light with every movement. But it was her eyes that held him captive, amber fire that found him instantly in the crowd, as if she'd known exactly where he would be. "Remember to breathe," Julian muttered, but Vance barely heard him. The world had narrowed to the sight of Delaney descending those stairs, every eye in the room drawn to her magnetic presence. Silas Warren moved first, breaking away from his admirers to intercept her at the bottom of the stairs. "Miss Blackwood," his voice carried across the sudden hush, "you look absolutely stunning tonight." Vance watched as Warren took her hand, bringing it to his lips in an old-world gesture that made his blood boil. Delaney's smile remained professional, but Vance saw the slight tension in her shoulders. "Mr. Warren," she replied coolly, "I didn't expect to see you here. Hostile takeovers usually happen behind closed doors, not at charity galas." Warren's laugh was practiced, perfect. "My dear, who said anything about hostility? I'm simply a businessman who recognizes untapped potential." The double meaning hung in the air like poison. Vance moved without conscious thought, drawn to her side as if by gravity. "Warren," he said, his voice arctic, "I believe you're in my spot." Delaney's eyes widened slightly as Vance's hand settled possessively on her lower back. Warren's smile never wavered, but something dangerous flashed in his pale eyes. "Sterling, always so territorial. But tell me, does your board know exactly what, or should I say who, you're so eager to protect?" "Dance with me," Vance said to Delaney, ignoring Warren completely. It wasn't a request. She placed her hand in his without hesitation, letting him lead her away from Warren's knowing smirk. The orchestra was playing something slow and intimate, and other couples parted before them like the Red Sea. "That was dangerous," she whispered as he pulled her close. One hand splayed across her back, while the other clasped hers over his heart. "The entire room is watching us." "Let them watch." His voice was rough against her ear. "Why did you have dinner with him last week?" Delaney stiffened in his arms, but didn't pull away. "Keeping tabs on me, Mr. Sterling." "Answer the question." His hand tightened on her waist as they moved across the floor in perfect synchronization. "He asked to discuss a potential settlement. I went to hear his terms." Her eyes met his, defiant. "That's my job, remember? Or don't you trust your chief legal officer anymore?" "I trust you with my life," he murmured, drawing her imperceptibly closer. "It's my heart I'm worried about." The raw honesty in his voice made her miss a step. He steadied her seamlessly, using the movement to pull her even closer. They were dancing too intimately now, breaking every unspoken rule of corporate etiquette, but Vance couldn't bring himself to care. "Jealous, Mr. Sterling." Her voice was teasing, but her eyes were serious as they moved across the floor. "Terrified," he admitted, the champagne making him reckless. "He'll try to take everything I care about, and right now the thing I care about most is in his crosshairs." Delaney's breath caught. "Vance, don't." His grip tightened. "Don't tell me we can't. Don't tell me about rules and protocols and professional boundaries. Tell me you don't feel this too, and I'll walk away right now." She looked up at him then, amber eyes swimming with emotions he'd never seen her display in the office. "You know I can't tell you that. Then tell me what you want." His voice was barely a whisper now, meant only for her. "I want—" She started, but movement over his shoulder made her stiffen. "Silas is coming this way, with the chairman of the board." Reality crashed back in. Vance spun them smoothly away from the approaching threat, but the spell was broken. As the song ended, he felt Delaney pulling away, rebuilding the careful walls between them. "Miss Blackwood," the chairman's booming voice carried across the dance floor. "Just the person I wanted to see. Could you spare a moment to discuss the Anderson merger?" Delaney stepped back from Vance's embrace, professional mask sliding perfectly into place. "Of course, Mr. Chairman. I have the preliminary documents right here." She walked away without looking back, leaving Vance with the ghost of her perfume and the maddening certainty that she'd been about to say something that would have changed everything. "Well, that was quite a show." Silas Warren's voice dripped with satisfaction as he appeared at Vance's side. "Tell me, does she know you're using her as a shield? Or does she actually believe you care about her?" Vance's hand curled into a fist at his side. "Careful, Warren. You're not the only one who can make threats." "Threats?" Warren's laugh was soft, venomous. "My dear boy, I'm making promises. By this time next week I'll own controlling interest in Sterling Enterprises, and your lovely Miss Blackwood, she'll have a choice to make: stay with a failing CEO or join the winning team. She'll never work for you." "No?" Warren's eyes gleamed. "You might be surprised what people will do when they discover they've been compromised. Those security cameras in your office work remarkably well, don't they?" Ice flooded Vance's veins. "You're bluffing." "Am I? Check your phone." As if on cue, Vance's phone buzzed in his pocket. The message was from an unknown number, a single image that made his blood run cold. It showed him and Delaney in his office the night before, standing too close, his hand reaching for her face. The timestamp was clear in the corner. "You bastard!" Vance breathed. "Now, now!" Warren smiled like a shark scenting blood. "Is that any way to talk to your new majority shareholder? The board meeting on Monday should be quite interesting. I wonder how they'll react when they see evidence of their CEO's indiscretions." "If you think you can blackmail me—" "Blackmail?" Please, Warren's voice dripped false offense. I'm simply ensuring corporate transparency. After all, the shareholders deserve to know if their leadership is compromised by personal entanglements. But I'm willing to be reasonable. Step down quietly, recommend me as your successor, and these photos never see the light of day. Ms. Blackwood's reputation remains intact, and you get to keep your dignity. Everyone wins. Vance's vision blurred red at the edges. Except you forgot one thing, Warren. Oh? And what's that? Vance stepped closer, using his height advantage to loom over the older man. I'm not my father. I don't fold under pressure. And if you come after what's mine, I will burn everything you own to the ground. Warren's smile never wavered. That's what I love about you, Sterling. So passionate, so protective. But tell me, are you protecting the company or the woman? Because soon you might have to choose. He melted back into the crowd, leaving Vance with a phone full of surveillance photos and the sickening realization that he'd walked right into a trap. Across the room, he caught Delaney's eye. She was still talking to the chairman, but something in his expression must have alarmed her because she took half a step in his direction. He shook his head slightly, warning her to stay put. They were being watched, documented, their every interaction weaponized against them. The game had changed, and he'd been too blind with wanting her to see the trap until it was too late. Julian appeared at his elbow, concern etched on his features. I saw Warren leave. What did he say to you? Vance handed him the phone without a word. Julian's sharp intake of breath said everything. We need to clear the building, Julian said quietly. Get our security team to sweep for bugs, cameras. No. Vance's voice was flat. We do nothing. Let him think he's won. I need time to think, to plan. And Delaney! Vance watched her across the room, the way the emerald silk caught the light, how her smile never quite reached her eyes as she spoke to the chairman. Everything he wanted, everything he couldn't have, wrapped in a package designed to destroy him. Protect her, he said finally. Whatever happens Monday, whatever Warren tries, protect her reputation. The rest doesn't matter. Vance, I mean it, Julian. If someone has to fall, it'll be me, not her, never her. The party swirled around them, a glittering facade hiding the wounds beneath. And somewhere in that crowd, Delaney felt Vance's eyes on her like a physical touch, unaware that he was already planning to sacrifice everything to keep her safe. The game had become infinitely more dangerous, and they were all out of moves. Chapter 4. Liquid Courage. Victory tasted like 30-year-old scotch in Sterling Tower's executive lounge. The city sparkled 60 floors below as Manhattan's most powerful gathered to celebrate their triumph over Silas Warren's attempted takeover. The emergency board meeting had lasted 14 hours, but in the end, Warren's scheme had crumbled under the weight of evidence that Delaney had meticulously gathered. Vance stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows, watching his reflection in the dark glass as he swirled the amber liquid in his crystal tumbler. Behind him, the celebration continued. Julian orchestrating congratulatory toasts, board members patting each other on the back as if they'd been on his side all along. But his eyes kept finding her in the glass, watching as Delaney moved through the crowd like a queen among courtiers. She'd been magnificent today. For 14 hours, she'd systematically dismantled Warren's legal strategy, revealing the complex web of shell companies and insider trading that had fueled his takeover attempt. Her voice never wavered, her logic unassailable, as she turned Warren's own evidence against him. By hour 12, even Warren's lawyers looked defeated. Now she wore victory like a crown, her charcoal grey suit as sharp as her mind, her smile diplomatic as she accepted congratulations from the same board members who'd questioned her loyalty just days ago. But Vance saw the tension in her shoulders, the careful way she held herself apart from the celebration. Quite a day, Julian said quietly, appearing at his side with a fresh bottle of Macallan. Warren's stock is in freefall. His board is calling for his resignation. Good. Vance's voice was rough from hours of debate. Pour me another. Julian complied, but his eyes were shrewd. This is your sixth, my friend. Maybe slow down. I'm celebrating. The scotch burned going down, but not enough to drown out the memory of Delaney's face when Warren had produced those surveillance photos. The hurt in her eyes quickly masked when she realized they'd been watched, documented. Their every private moment turned into ammunition. She saved us today, Julian murmured. Warren thought those photos would be his trump card. He never expected her to turn it around, to use them as evidence of his corporate espionage instead of our indiscretion. Vance's hand tightened on his glass. The photos hadn't been explicit, just moments caught between them over the past months. A lingering touch here, a heated look there. But in Delaney's hands, they became proof of Warren's illegal surveillance, his attempt to manipulate the board through blackmail. She'd turned his weapon into his downfall and saved both their reputations in the process. I need air, Vance announced abruptly, pushing away from the window. The room spun slightly, definitely his sixth scotch, maybe his seventh. He made his way to the private terrace, nodding automatically at congratulations called his way. The October night was crisp, the wind sharp enough to clear his head slightly as he looked out over his domain. Lights twinkled in office buildings across the city, each one representing someone else's ambition, someone else's dreams. He'd spent his whole life becoming the kind of man who could stand on this terrace and know he'd won, know he was untouchable. So why did victory feel so hollow? You disappeared. Her voice behind him sent electricity down his spine. The board is asking for you. They want another toast. Let them drink without me. He didn't turn around, but he felt her presence like a physical touch as she moved to stand beside him at the railing. You're drunk, she observed, no judgment in her voice. Getting there. He finally looked at her, and immediately wished he hadn't. The wind had brought colour to her cheeks, loosened a few strands of hair from her elegant twist. She looked softer in the darkness, more vulnerable. Vance. She started, then stopped, seeming to wrestle with her words. What Warren did, those photos, I'm sorry. That broke through the Scotch haze. He turned to face her fully. You're sorry? You saved this company today, saved my reputation, saved everything. Did I? Her voice was barely a whisper. Because you've barely looked at me since those photos came out. If I crossed a line, if I made you uncomfortable, stop. He stepped closer, invading her space in a way he never allowed himself to do sober. You think I'm avoiding you because I'm uncomfortable? Christ, Delaney, I'm avoiding you because every time I look at you, I want to... He trailed off, lost in the way the city lights played across her face. She didn't step back. Want to what? Her eyes met his, challenging. The Scotch sang in his veins, washing away years of control, of propriety, of carefully maintained distance. This, he growled, and kissed her. For one heart-stopping moment, she froze. Then her hands were in his hair, her body melting against his as the kiss deepened into something desperate and wild. She tasted like victory and champagne and everything he'd been denying himself since the day she walked into his life. His hands found her waist, pulling her closer as he backed her against the railing. The wind whipped around them, but neither felt the cold. Her fingers dug into his shoulders as his mouth moved to her neck, drawing a soft gasp that made his blood burn. Wait, she managed, even as she arched into his touch. The cameras. Disabled. He smiled against her skin. First thing I did after the meeting. No more surveillance, no more watching, just us. She pulled back slightly, searching his face. Is there an us? The vulnerability in her voice cut through the alcohol haze. He cupped her face in his hands, needing her to understand. There's been an us since the moment you walked into my lobby and turned my world upside down. I've just been too afraid to admit it. Afraid? She smiled slightly. The great Vance Sterling? Afraid? Terrified, he admitted, brushing his thumb across her lower lip. You make me lose control. Every time you walk into a room, every time you challenge me in meetings, every time you look at me like you're looking at me now, I forget who I'm supposed to be. And who are you supposed to be? Controlled, untouchable, the man who puts the company first, always. His forehead rested against hers. But with you, God, Delaney, with you, I just want to be the man who gets to love you. She inhaled sharply at the word love, but before she could respond, the terrace door opened. They sprang apart as Julian stepped out, then immediately stopped. Sorry, he said, though his expression suggested he wasn't sorry at all. But the chairman is asking for both of you, something about a press statement. Delaney smoothed her suit, professional mask sliding back into place. But Vance saw the slight tremor in her hands, the way her lips were still swollen from his kiss. We should go in, she said, not quite meeting his eyes. The press will be waiting. Delaney. He caught her hand before she could leave. This isn't over. She looked at their joined hands, then up at him, with eyes that held both promise and warning. No, she agreed softly. I don't think it is. They walked back into the lounge separately, maintaining careful distance as cameras flashed and reporters shouted questions. But Vance felt the ghost of her kiss like a brand, and when their eyes met across the crowded room, he saw his own hunger reflected back at him. The scotch still burned in his veins, but it wasn't what made him feel drunk anymore. That was all her. The way she commanded the press conference, the subtle glances she sent his way, the knowledge that everything had changed on that terrace. Warren had tried to use their connection to destroy them. Instead, he'd forced them to stop denying it existed. And now that Vance had tasted what it felt like to kiss her, to hold her, to whisper dangerous truths against her skin, there was no going back. Let the press speculate. Let the board whisper. He was done pretending he wasn't in love with the woman who'd saved his empire. The only question now was whether she was ready to stop pretending too. As the cameras flashed and the questions flew, Vance watched Delaney command the room with the same fierce grace that had brought Warren to his knees. She was a queen in her own right, not a prize to be won or a weapon to be wielded. And if loving her meant risking everything he'd built, then maybe it was time to rebuild around something that actually mattered. The press conference ended, but the night was young. And somewhere between the scotch and the stars, Vance Sterling had finally found the courage to reach for what he really wanted. Now, he just had to hope she was brave enough to reach back. Chapter 5. Morning light. Dawn painted Manhattan in shades of gold, sunlight streaming through the floor-to-ceiling windows of Vance's penthouse office. He hadn't meant to spend the night here, but after the press conference, after Delaney, sleep had been impossible. He'd spent hours pacing, remembering the taste of her lips, the soft sounds she'd made when he kissed her neck, the way she'd looked at him under the stars. The scotch had worn off hours ago, leaving him with crystal clarity about what he'd done. He'd crossed a line that couldn't be uncrossed, broken every rule he'd written himself about professional boundaries, and God help him, he didn't regret a single moment. His phone buzzed. Another message from Julian about the morning's board meeting. The victory over Warren had bought them breathing room, but the real work was just beginning. They needed to stabilize the stock price, reassure investors, project strength. He needed to be the controlled, untouchable CEO everyone expected. Instead, he was standing in yesterday's suit, his tie long discarded, staring at the spot on his private terrace where he'd finally kissed the woman who'd haunted his dreams for months. The soft click of his office door opening made him turn. Delaney stood there, fresh and pristine, in a deep purple suit that made his mouth go dry. She'd clearly gone home to change, but the subtle shadows under her eyes suggested she'd slept as little as he had. "You're here early," she said, her voice carefully neutral. "Never left." He watched her reaction, saw the slight widening of her eyes as she took in his rumpled appearance. "We need to talk about last night." "Do we?" She moved into the office but kept her distance, as if afraid to get too close. "I think you made your feelings quite clear." "Did I?" He stepped toward her, drawn by the same magnetic pull he'd felt since the day they met. "Because I was drunk enough to finally kiss you, but not drunk enough to tell you everything." Color bloomed in her cheeks. "Vance, don't. I love you." The words fell between them like stones in still water. "I've loved you since you stormed into my lobby and told security they'd have to arrest you to keep you out of my office. I've loved you through every argument, every late-night strategy session, every time you challenged me to be better than I thought I could be." She inhaled sharply, her professional mask cracking. "We can't..." "Can't what?" He moved closer, close enough to see the gold flecks in her amber eyes. "Can't love each other? Can't be together? Warren already tried to use our feelings as a weapon, and you turned it against him. What are we afraid of now?" "Everything." The word burst from her like she couldn't contain it anymore. "The board meeting in an hour, the shareholders who'll question every decision we make, the press who'll say I slept my way to chief legal officer, the thousands of employees whose livelihoods depend on this company's reputation. I'll resign." The words surprised them both. "If that's what it takes." "No." She stepped forward, pressing her hand to his chest. "This company is your legacy. I won't be the reason you lose it. You're my legacy." His hand covered hers where it rested over his heart. "All of this, the buildings, the money, the power, it means nothing if I have to keep pretending I don't love you." Tears shimmered in her eyes. "When did you become so reckless?" "When loving you became more important than controlling everything." He brought their joined hands to his lips, kissing her knuckles. "Tell me you don't feel the same. Tell me last night was just the champagne and victory and I'll never mention it again." Instead of answering, she kissed him. It was different from last night, softer, sweeter, but no less desperate. Her free hand came up to cup his face as he pulled her closer, pouring months of longing into the kiss. When they finally broke apart, she rested her forehead against his. "I love you too," she whispered. "God help me, but I do." The words made his heart soar, but reality was already intruding. His phone buzzed again, Julian reminding him the board was gathering. Through the windows, the sun climbed higher, painting them both in morning light that left nowhere to hide. "The board meeting," she murmured, though she made no move to step away from his embrace. "Let them wait." She smiled against his lips. "They'll talk. Let them talk." His hands framed her face, memorizing every detail of this moment. "I'm done hiding how I feel about you. Vance." Her voice held a warning note. "We need to be smart about this. The company will survive." He kissed her again, briefly. "Warren's gone. The takeover threat is neutralized, and I refuse to spend another day pretending you're just my chief legal officer." A knock at the door made them spring apart. Julian entered, then stopped short at the sight of them. "I can come back." "No," Delaney said, smoothing her suit. "I was just leaving. The board will be waiting." She moved toward the door, every inch the professional, but paused before leaving. "This conversation isn't over," she told Vance, her eyes holding a promise that made his blood heat. "No," he agreed softly. "It's just beginning." Julian waited until the door closed behind her before speaking. "So, you finally told her. That obvious?" My friend, you've been obvious since the day she walked into this building. Julian's smile was knowing. The question is, what are you going to do about it? Vance looked out at the city spread before him. His empire, built on control and calculation and careful rules that no longer seemed to matter in the face of what he felt for Delaney. Whatever it takes, he said simply. I'm not losing her, Julian, not to protect the company's reputation, not to satisfy the board, not for anything. The press will have a field day. Let them. The shareholders will question every decision you make together. Then we'll prove them wrong, like we always do. Julian studied him for a long moment. I've known you since college, Vance. I've watched you build this company with iron control and perfect discipline. But I've never seen you like this, willing to risk everything for someone. Not someone, Vance corrected. Her, only her. His phone buzzed again, a message from Delaney this time. The board is ready for you. Try to look less like you spent the night in your office. He smiled at her attempt at normality, but his response was anything but professional. I love you. No matter what happens in that boardroom, that won't change. Her reply came seconds later. I love you too. Now get down here and be the CEO I fell in love with. Julian read the exchange over his shoulder and laughed. Well, my friend, it seems the mighty Vance Sterling has finally met his match. No, Vance said, heading to his private bathroom to make himself presentable. I've finally found my partner. The sun climbed higher over Manhattan as Vance Sterling prepared to face his board. But for the first time in his life, the empire he'd built seemed secondary to the woman who'd taught him that some things were worth losing control for. Let the board question them. Let the press speculate. Let the whole world talk. He was done pretending he wasn't madly, completely, irrevocably in love with Delaney Blackwood. And judging by the way she'd kissed him this morning, she was done pretending too. Chapter 6. Corporate Warfare. The headlines splashed across the Wall Street Journal's website like a declaration of war. Sterling Enterprises CEO in secret relationship with chief legal officer. Below it, the surveillance photo from the terrace showed their kiss in stark detail, the New York skyline a glittering witness to their moment of weakness. Vance crushed the crystal tumbler in his hand, ignoring the sting as shards bit into his palm. Blood dripped onto the mahogany desk, staining the morning's financial reports crimson. Silas Warren's final revenge, Julian said grimly, watching his friend from the office doorway. He may have lost the company, but he made sure to poison the well on his way out. How did he get that photo? Vance's voice was deadly quiet. We swept for cameras. We disabled everything. Drone. Julian tossed a tablet onto the desk. Practically invisible at night. The tech boys found the signal this morning, but it was too late. The story's gone viral. The tablet showed dozens of headlines, each more sensational than the last. Sterling romance, love in the boardroom. Power couple or power play? Questions raised about Sterling CLO's rapid rise. A soft knock interrupted them. Delaney stood in the doorway, her usual confidence replaced by something more vulnerable. The board's demanding an emergency session. They want to discuss. She faltered, then straightened her spine. They want to discuss my position with the company. Like hell. Vance started toward her, but she held up a hand to stop him. Don't. Her voice cracked slightly. Please, I need to handle this professionally. There's nothing professional about this. He gestured at the headlines screaming from every screen. This is a deliberate attack. Warren's trying to destroy everything we what? She stepped into the office, closing the door behind her. Everything we built? Or everything we feel? Both. He moved toward her, unable to keep his distance when she looked so wounded. I won't let them push you out. I'll resign first. Step down as CLO, he countered. desperate to protect her. "I'll find you any position you want at any company in New York. Hell, I'll buy you your own firm. Just don't—" "I will not run." Her voice could have cut diamonds. "And if you try to handle me, Vance Sterling, you'll learn exactly how good a lawyer I really am." The fire in her eyes, the steel in her spine. God, he loved her more in that moment than he'd thought possible. "The board meeting starts in an hour," Julian interrupted softly. "We need a strategy. I have one." Delaney's smile was sharp enough to draw blood. "We tell the truth." Both men stared at her. "The truth?" Julian asked carefully. "Yes." She moved to the window, looking out at the city that had witnessed their love story. "We admit that yes, we're in a relationship. Yes, it developed after I joined the company. And yes, we handled it exactly as corporate policy dictates, by disclosing it to the board chairman last week." Vance's eyes widened. "We did." "Check your email." Her smile turned slightly smug. "The timestamp on that disclosure form is 3 days before Warren's photo was taken. I may be in love, but I'm still a lawyer. I protect what matters." Pride and love warred in Vance's chest. "You knew this was coming." "I knew Warren wouldn't go quietly." She turned back to face them. "The question is, are you ready for what happens next? Because they're going to question every decision we've ever made together, every promotion, every contract, every victory." "Let them." Vance moved to stand beside her at the window. "We've done nothing wrong." "Haven't we?" Her voice was soft. "I love you, Vance. God help me, I love you more than I ever thought possible. But love isn't supposed to complicate billion-dollar decisions. Love isn't supposed to make headlines that shake investor confidence." "Ms. Blackwood," Vance's assistant's voice came through the intercom. "The board members are arriving early. They're asking for you specifically." Delaney squared her shoulders, every inch the warrior preparing for battle. "Tell them I'll be right there." "We go together," Vance insisted, reaching for her hand. She shook her head. I need to face them alone first. Let them see that I'm not hiding behind you, not using you for protection." "Delaney, trust me." She kissed him briefly, fiercely. "I didn't become the youngest CLO in New York by letting old men intimidate me." She strode out of the office, head high, leaving Vance and Julian staring after her. "She's something else," Julian said quietly. "She's everything." Vance moved to his desk, pulling up the market reports. Sterling Enterprises stock was already dropping, investors spooked by the headlines. "And if the board tries to force her out?" "They might have legitimate concerns," Julian pointed out carefully. "The appearance of impropriety?" "Appearance." Vance's laugh was harsh. "I appeared to be a cold, controlled CEO until I met her. I appeared to care only about profit margins and market share. Now I appear to be in love. Which one of those appearances is actually damaging to this company?" Before Julian could answer, Vance's phone lit up with a message from an unknown number. The video attachment made his blood run cold. It showed Delaney in a restaurant with Silas Warren, taken months ago. Their body language was intimate, their expressions intense, without audio, without context. It looked like— "He's not done," Julian breathed, watching over Vance's shoulder. "This was his backup plan. If he couldn't take the company, he'd destroy your trust in each other." Vance stared at the frozen image of Delaney leaning close to Warren, her expression unreadable. The timestamp matched the night she'd claimed she was meeting him to discuss settlement terms. "Get me everything," he ordered, his voice arctic. "Every photo, every video, every record of every meeting between them. I want to know exactly what game Warren was playing." "And Delaney?" Vance looked toward the boardroom where the woman he loved was fighting for her career, her reputation, their future. The woman who might have been playing her own game all along. "Protect her," he said finally, the words like ash in his mouth. Whatever happens, whatever the truth is, protect her. The press, the board, the shareholders, they can come after me instead. Even if she was working with Warren, even if every moment between us was a lie. His hands clenched on the desk. Protect her, Julian. That's an order. As his oldest friend left to do his bidding, Vance Sterling stared at the photo that had started it all. Him and Delaney on the terrace, lost in each other under the stars. Real or fake, truth or lie, that moment had changed everything. Now he had to decide. Trust the woman who'd captured his heart, or believe the evidence suggesting she'd been playing him all along. The board meeting would start soon. Delaney was in there alone, fighting for them both. And somewhere in the city, Silas Warren was watching his carefully laid trap spring shut around the most powerful couple in Manhattan. The war wasn't over, it was just beginning, and this time the casualties wouldn't be measured in stock prices and market share, but in broken hearts and shattered trust. Vance straightened his tie, squared his shoulders, and prepared to face the board. Whatever the truth was, whatever game Warren was playing, one thing remained certain. He loved Delaney Blackwood, and if loving her destroyed him, then he'd make damn sure he wasn't the only one who burned. Chapter 7. Allies and Enemies. The war room on Sterling Tower's 59th floor hummed with tension. Julian Pierce stood at the head of the conference table, surrounded by screens displaying market data, news feeds, and social media trends. To his right, Heath Anderson, the COO, coordinated with PR teams across 3 continents. Cove Martinez's fingers flew across multiple keyboards, tracking digital trails and monitoring communications. "The board's splitting," Julian reported, his tie loosened after hours of crisis management. "Warren's people are pushing for a vote of no confidence. They want to remove Vance as CEO. "Over my dead body," Heath growled, his loyalty to Vance evident in every line of his powerful frame. "We've worked too hard to let that snake Warren destroy everything." Clover Bennett burst through the door, her usual PR polish slightly frayed. "It's worse than we thought. Warren's people are leaking more photos, not just of Vance and Delaney, but of meetings between Delaney and Warren going back months." The room fell silent. Everyone remembered how Vance had reacted to the first video, the security footage of Delaney and Warren in that intimate restaurant setting. He'd gone absolutely still, the kind of stillness that preceded storms. "I've got something," Cove announced, her screens reflecting in her determined eyes. "The metadata on those photos is inconsistent. Some of the timestamps have been altered." "Can you prove it?" Julian moved to look over her shoulder. "Give me time, but look at this one, supposedly taken in April at the Four Seasons. Except the restaurant was closed for renovations that entire month." Hope flickered through the room. But before they could celebrate, Heath's phone buzzed. His expression darkened as he read the message. "Vance is in his office," he reported grimly. "Apparently, he's been drinking since the board meeting ended. His assistant says he's already gone through 2 bottles of scotch." "How bad was it?" Clover asked softly. "Bad." Julian ran a hand through his disheveled hair. "The board questioned every decision they've made together for the past year. Every contract, every strategy. They're claiming conflict of interest, suggesting their relationship compromised business judgment." "That's ridiculous." Cove spun in her chair. "Delaney's brilliant. Half our success this year is because of her legal strategies." "Which is exactly why Warren's targeting her," Heath pointed out. "She's not just Vance's weakness, she's a legitimate threat to anyone trying to take control of Sterling Enterprises." "Where is she now?" Clover asked, noting the empty chair where Delaney usually sat during crisis meetings. Julian's expression was grim. "After the board meeting, she went to her office to review some files. Said she needed time to think. That was 6 hours ago." "I saw her," Cove said quietly. "She was crying." Delaney Blackwood, who once argued a case before the Supreme Court without breaking a sweat, was crying in her office. The revelation hit them all hard. They'd watched the romance bloom between their CEO and CLO, seen how they made each other better, stronger. Now Warren was trying to twist that love into something ugly, using it as a weapon to destroy them both. His hands shook, Julian said suddenly, staring at nothing. When that video played in the board meeting, showing Delaney and Warren together, I've known Vance since college, and I've never seen his hands shake before. She loves him, Clover insisted. Anyone with eyes can see that. Whatever those meetings with Warren were about, there has to be an explanation. There is. The voice from the doorway made them all turn. Delaney stood there, her usual elegance marred by reddened eyes and slightly smudged makeup. But her spine was steel as she walked into the room. Warren approached me 3 months ago, she continued, moving to the head of the table. He said he had evidence of financial irregularities at Sterling Enterprises, evidence that could destroy the company. He offered to suppress it if I helped him with his takeover bid. Why didn't you tell us? Heath demanded. Because I needed proof. Those meetings, those apparently intimate dinners. I was gathering evidence of his blackmail attempt, recording conversations, collecting documents. She smiled grimly. I'm a lawyer. I know how to build a case. The video of you leaning close to him, Julian started. I was whispering that I knew about his insider trading. Her eyes flashed. I had proof of that too, which is why he had to move up his timeline. He knew I was close to exposing him. Why didn't you tell Vance? Cove asked gently. Delaney's composure cracked slightly. Because I love him, and Warren's alleged evidence involved Vance's father. May he rest in peace. I couldn't be the one to tarnish that legacy. I needed to be sure, to have concrete proof before I brought any of it to light. Understanding dawned on their faces. Delaney hadn't been betraying Vance. She'd been protecting him, even before they admitted their feelings for each other. He thinks you betrayed him, Julian said softly. Right now, he's up there drowning in scotch, believing the worst. I know. Her voice broke slightly. But I couldn't tell him what I was doing without compromising the investigation. And now Warren's turned it against you, Clover finished. Made it look like you were working with him instead of against him. Show him the evidence, Heath urged. Explain everything. Delaney shook her head, tears finally spilling over. Warren's people got to it first. My office was broken into last night. Everything's gone. The recordings, the documents, all of it. It's my word against their carefully crafted narrative. Silence fell as they absorbed the implications. Without proof, it looked bad. Regular meetings with their biggest enemy, secrets kept from the man she claimed to love. Sir? Vance's assistant's voice came through the intercom. Mr. Sterling's asking for Mr. Pierce. He says it's urgent. Julian stood, straightening his tie. His hands were shaking, he said again, looking at Delaney. The great Vance Sterling, who's never shown weakness in his life, couldn't hide how much the thought of losing you destroyed him. I never betrayed him, she whispered. Everything I did, every secret I kept, it was all to protect him. Then prove it. Cove's voice was fierce as she turned back to her computers. I'll keep digging into the metadata. Clover can work her PR magic. Heath can handle the board. But you need to fight for him, Delaney. Fight for your love story. They're going to fire me, Delaney said softly. The board, they're ready to force me out to contain the scandal. Let them try, Heath growled. We're your allies in this war, and we don't abandon our own. Julian paused at the door. He's hurting, Delaney. Hurting in a way I've never seen before. But under that pain, under that scotch-soaked anger, he loves you. Don't let Warren steal that from you both. As their friends mobilized around her, Delaney moved to the window. Somewhere up there, The man she loved was drowning his pain in expensive scotch, believing she'd betrayed everything they built together. "I'm coming up," she said suddenly, decisively. "Julian, tell him I'm coming up. Tell him I love him, and I'm done letting Warren tear us apart." Their allies watched her go, then turned back to their tasks with renewed determination. This was war, and they wouldn't let their friends fight alone. In his office, Vance's hands shook as he poured another drink. But this time, it wasn't just the scotch making him unsteady. It was the memory of her eyes in that board meeting, trying to tell him something he'd been too angry to hear. The elevator dinged, and he knew without turning that she was there. His warrior queen, coming to fight one last battle, not for the company this time, but for their love. Let Warren have his schemes, let the board have their doubts. Some things were worth fighting for, worth believing in, worth trusting even when all the evidence said not to, and Delaney Blackwood had always been worth everything. Chapter 8. Sacrifice Play. The resignation letter lay on Delaney's desk like a white flag of surrender. She'd spent hours crafting each word, making sure it was perfect, professional, and completely devoid of the emotion threatening to tear her heart apart. Her signature at the bottom felt like signing away her soul, but she knew it was the only way. The clock on her wall showed midnight. Most of Sterling Tower was dark now, but lights still burned in Vance's office 60 floors above. She could picture him there, drinking scotch, believing she'd betrayed him. The thought made her hands shake as she gathered her personal items into a small box. "Don't do this." Cove's voice from the doorway was thick with tears. "We can fight Warren. We can prove what really happened." "There's no time." Delaney carefully wrapped the crystal paperweight Vance had given her after their first major victory together. "The emergency board meeting is at 9 a.m. If I don't step down, they'll fire him." "Then let them." Cove stepped into the office, her usual tech genius confidence replaced by desperate pleading. "Vance would rather lose the company than lose you." "That's exactly why I have to go." Delaney's voice cracked slightly. "Everything his father built, everything he's sacrificed for, I won't let him throw it all away for me. He loves you, and I love him." She looked around her office one last time, memorizing the view of Manhattan that had witnessed so many late-night strategy sessions, so many moments when professional boundaries began to blur. "That's why I have to protect him, even if he hates me for it." Her computer chimed. One last email to send before she walked away from everything she'd built here. She'd spent hours writing this one too, but it still felt inadequate. "Dear Mr. Sterling, by the time you read this, I will have submitted my resignation as Chief Legal Officer of Sterling Enterprises. My departure is effective immediately. I know you have questions. I know you're hurt and angry, and you have every right to be. But everything I did, every secret I kept, was to protect you and this company. Someday, when the truth comes out, I hope you'll understand. I love you, not for your power or your position, but for the man who kisses me like I'm precious and looks at me like I'm extraordinary. The man who taught me that some things are worth risking everything for. I'm risking everything now, walking away so you don't have to choose between me and your legacy. Please don't look for me. Please don't try to change my mind. Just know that loving you was the easiest thing I've ever done, and leaving you is the hardest. Forever yours, Delaney." Her vision blurred as she hit send. Then she shut down her computer for the last time, placed her security badge on top of the resignation letter, and picked up her box of memories. "At least let me help you carry that," Cove begged, still hovering in the doorway. "No." Delaney's smile was watery but determined. "I need to do this alone." The elevator ride down was the longest of her life. Every floor represented another memory she was leaving behind. The conference room where she'd first challenged Vance's acquisition strategy, the executive lounge where they'd celebrated victories, the terrace where he'd finally kissed her. The security guard in the lobby looked surprised to see her leaving so late, but her badge still worked to let her out. One last time, she looked up at the illuminated crown of Sterling Tower, at the office where the love of her life was probably still drinking, still believing the worst of her. "I'm sorry," she whispered to the night sky. "I'm so sorry." Her car was waiting, but before she could reach it, a voice stopped her. "Running away?" Silas Warren emerged from the shadows, looking pleased with himself. "I must say, this is even better than I hoped." Rage burned through her grief. "You orchestrated all of this. The photos, the videos, the theft of my evidence, and you played right into my hands." His smile was serpentine. The great Delaney Blackwood, reduced to sneaking out in the middle of the night like a guilty mistress. "I have copies," she bluffed, her lawyer's instincts kicking in. "Everything you said to me, every threat about Vance's father." "No, you don't." He stepped closer, his confidence absolute. "My people were very thorough when they cleared out your office. And now, thanks to your noble sacrifice, Vance Sterling will be exactly what I always said he was. A man too weak to separate business from pleasure, too emotional to lead a company of this magnitude." "You won't win." Her voice was steel despite her tears. "Vance is stronger than you know." "Is he?" Warren's eyes glittered with malice. "Right now, he's drinking himself into oblivion, believing the woman he loves betrayed him. By morning, he'll be in no condition to fight the board's vote of no confidence. And you'll be gone. Your reputation in tatters, your brilliant career reduced to a cautionary tale about office romance." The urge to slap him was almost overwhelming, but Delaney held herself in check. "You really don't understand him at all, do you? Vance Sterling doesn't break. He gets angry, and when he's angry, he makes mistakes," Warren finished smugly. "Emotional, costly mistakes that will finally give me control of Sterling Enterprises." A car door slammed nearby, making them both turn. Julian Pierce stepped out of the shadows, his expression thunderous. "Ms. Blackwood," he said formally, ignoring Warren completely. "A word before you go." She nodded, brushing past Warren without another glance, but his words followed her. Running to the best friend now. How predictably desperate. Julian waited until they were out of earshot before speaking. "He's destroying his office. I've never seen him like this." Fresh tears spilled down her cheeks. "Take care of him for me. Make sure he's okay." "He found your letter funny enough to punch a wall," Julian said quietly. "His hand is bleeding, but he won't let anyone near him. He keeps reading it over and over, like he's trying to decode some hidden message." "There is no hidden message," she lied, praying he couldn't see the truth in her eyes. "Just goodbye." Julian studied her for a long moment. "You did it to save him, didn't you? All those meetings with Warren, all those secrets. You were protecting Vance from something." "It doesn't matter now." She clutched her box of memories closer. "The evidence is gone. Warren won. He did it for you too, you know." Julian's voice was gentle. "Everything he's built, everything he's become, it was all leading him to you. And now you're just leaving." A crash echoed from high above, something large being thrown in Vance's office. The sound shattered what was left of her composure. "Tell him," she struggled to steady her voice, "tell him I meant every word. Tell him I'm sorry. Tell him yourself," Julian pleaded. "Go up there, explain everything." "I can't." She pressed her box into his hands, unable to carry the weight of her memories any longer. "Give this to him when he's ready. When he can understand why I had to go." Before Julian could argue further, she turned and fled to her waiting car. As it pulled away from the curb, she finally let herself break down completely, sobbing as Sterling Tower receded in the rearview mirror. In his office, 60 floors above, Vance Sterling stood in the wreckage of everything he'd thought he understood. Her resignation letter mocked him from his desk, her goodbye email burned on his screen, and the taste of scotch couldn't wash away the memory of her kisses. His bloody hand throbbed where he'd punched the wall, but the physical pain was nothing compared to the agony in his chest. She was gone. The woman who'd stormed into his life and made him believe in something more than profit margins and power plays had walked away. Why? He whispered to the empty room, to the city lights that had witnessed their love story, to the memory of her smile that haunted him. Why didn't you trust me enough to tell me the truth? But the night held no answers, only the echo of his own broken heart and the certainty that nothing would ever be the same again. Dawn would bring the board meeting, Warren's triumph, and a world without Delaney Blackwood in it. But for now, Vance Sterling stood in his ruined office and let himself feel everything he'd spent a lifetime controlling: rage, pain, and a love so deep it felt like drowning. She was gone, and with her went every dream he'd never known he had, until she taught him how to want more than power, more than control, more than the empire he'd built on careful rules and perfect discipline. The sun would rise soon on a changed world, but in the darkness before dawn, two hearts broke in perfect synchronization, separated by pride and pain and sacrifices made in the name of love. Chapter 9. Counterattack. 3 days after Delaney's departure, Vance Sterling emerged from his grief like a storm breaking. The scotch bottles disappeared from his office, replaced by coffee and cold determination. He'd built his empire by being smarter, faster, and more ruthless than his opponents. Now he turned all of that force against Silas Warren with laser focus. "The board meeting is in 48 hours, Julian announced, watching his friend study market data with bloodshot eyes. "Warren's people are confident they have the votes to remove you. Let them try." Vance's voice was gravel rough from lack of sleep. "Cove, what did you find?" The tech genius looked up from her wall of screens, her usual vibrant energy subdued but determined. "The metadata on those photos was definitely manipulated. I can prove the timestamps were altered on at least 3 of them." "Not enough." Vance stood, pacing the length of his office. The bandage on his hand was a constant reminder of the night Delaney left. "We need more. Everything Warren's done, every deal, every transaction, I want it all exposed." "I might have something." Clover Bennett entered, tablet in hand. "My sources say Warren's been making regular payments to someone inside Sterling Enterprises. Large amounts, going back months." "A spy?" Julian straightened. "A partner." Heath Anderson's deep voice preceded him into the office. "Someone high enough to help orchestrate this whole scheme." Vance stopped pacing, his mind racing. "Check the board members. Anyone who's been pushing hardest for the vote of no confidence?" "Already did." Cove's fingers flew across her keyboard. "Nothing unusual in their financials. But there's something else. Those surveillance photos. They weren't taken by a drone." "What?" "The angle's wrong. They had to have been taken from inside the building. Someone with access to the executive floor." Understanding dawned like ice in Vance's veins. "Thompson, the head of security?" Julian frowned. "Who else would have access to every camera, every security feed? Who could plant new devices without raising suspicion?" Vance moved to his desk, pulling up personnel files. "And who was hired 6 months ago on the recommendation of—" "The board chairman." Heath finished grimly. "Warren's oldest friend." The pieces were falling into place. Vance's hands clenched on his desk as rage burned through him. "They've been planning this from the beginning. Warren, Thompson, the chairman. They were watching us, documenting everything, waiting for the perfect moment to strike." "But why target Delaney?" Clover asked softly. "Why not just expose your relationship directly?" "Because she was a threat." The words tasted like ash. Not just to their takeover plans, but to something bigger, something she discovered in those meetings with Warren. His phone buzzed, another message from the unknown number that had been tormenting him. But this time, instead of surveillance photos, it was a video. His hands shook slightly as he pressed play. Delaney's face filled the screen, filmed in what looked like a restaurant private room. Her expression was fierce as she spoke. "I have proof of what you did to James Sterling. Proof that you orchestrated the accident that killed Vance's father. If you come after Sterling Enterprises again, I'll make sure everyone knows exactly what kind of monster you are." Warren's voice came from off-screen, smooth as poison. "My dear, by the time anyone sees this video, you'll be long gone, and poor Vance will never know you were trying to protect him. He'll remember you as just another ambitious woman who used him to climb the corporate ladder." The video ended, leaving Vance's office in stunned silence. She was building a case against him. Julian's voice was quiet with realization. All those meetings, all those secrets, she was trying to prove Warren killed your father. The truth hit Vance like a physical blow. Every moment he'd doubted her, every bitter thought he'd drowned in scotch, while she'd been fighting to avenge his father's death. "Where did this come from?" Heath demanded, examining the video file. "Someone inside Warren's organization is having an attack of conscience," Clover reported, checking her sources. "More files are being leaked every hour. Financial records, surveillance logs, internal memos." "Thompson panicked," Cove added, her screens filling with data. "He's trying to cover his tracks, deleting security footage. But I've got him. Every file he erases, I recover, including ... She trailed off, her expression shocked as new video filled her screens. It showed Delaney in her office the night she left, but not alone. Thompson was there, his face twisted with cruel satisfaction as he removed files from her desk. "The evidence," Vance breathed. "She didn't just leave it behind, they stole it. Which means it still exists." Julian's eyes lit with understanding. Thompson wouldn't destroy evidence that valuable. He'd keep it as insurance against Warren. "Find him." Vance's voice could have frozen hell. "Now." The next hours passed in a blur of activity. Cove traced Thompson's electronic trail, while Heath mobilized security teams. Clover worked her media contacts, preparing for the storm to come. And Julian watched his oldest friend transform from a man broken by love into something far more dangerous. "She did it all for you," he said softly as they waited for news. "Every meeting with Warren, every secret she kept. She was trying to bring your father's killer to justice. And I believed the worst of her." Vance's laugh was harsh. "I sat up here drinking scotch and feeling betrayed while she sacrificed everything to protect me. We'll find her. Will we?" Vance turned to the window, watching his city sparkle in the gathering dusk. "She's brilliant, Julian. If she doesn't want to be found—" "Sir?" His assistant's voice interrupted through the intercom. "We found Thompson. He's trying to leave the country, and there's something else. Miss Blackwood's friend Cove managed to access his private cloud storage. You need to see this." The files appeared on every screen in Vance's office, hundreds of documents, photos and recordings. Evidence of Warren's decades of corruption, carefully collected and catalogued, and at the center of it all, a detailed report of how he'd sabotaged James Sterling's car 15 years ago, ensuring the brakes would fail at exactly the right moment. "Send everything to the SEC," Vance ordered, his voice deadly calm. "To the FBI, the media, everyone. I want Warren's empire burned to the ground by morning." "Already done," Cove reported with fierce satisfaction. "He's being arrested as we speak." "The chairman too," Heath added, "and Thompson's singing like a bird trying to cut a deal." Victory should have tasted sweet. Instead, all Vance could think about was Delaney. alone somewhere, believing she'd had to sacrifice their love to save him. "Find her," he told his friends, his voice raw with emotion. "Whatever it takes, however long it takes, find her. I need to tell her." "That you love her," Julian suggested gently. "That she fought this battle alone for too long." Vance moved to his desk, beginning to plan. "Now it's my turn to fight for us." As his team mobilized to track down the woman he loved, Vance Sterling finally understood what real strength looked like, not in controlling everything, but in being willing to risk everything for love. Delaney had risked it all for him. Now he would move heaven and earth to bring her home. The war wasn't over, but this time they would fight it together. Chapter 10. The Truth About Power. The board meeting was a bloodbath. Silas Warren's empire crumbled in hours as evidence of his crimes played across every screen in Sterling Tower's main conference room. His face grew ashen as his own voice condemned him, admitting to orchestrating James Sterling's death in recordings Delaney had secretly made during their meetings. Vance sat at the head of the table, cold and imperial as his father's killer was led away in handcuffs. The chairman followed shortly after, along with 3 board members whose complicity Thompson had revealed in his desperate bid for leniency. But victory felt hollow without her. "Warren Enterprises' stock has dropped 60%, Julian reported, watching the financial feeds. "Their board is calling for an emergency session. Shareholders are in panic." "Buy it," Vance ordered without hesitation. "All of it, every share that comes on the market." "That will cost billions," Heath warned. "I don't care." Vance's voice was steel. "He tried to destroy everything my father built, everything Delaney sacrificed herself to protect. I want his company stripped to the bones." His team exchanged glances, but began executing the orders. They'd never seen him like this, focused, relentless, turning all his power and resources toward a single goal. Within hours, Sterling Enterprises owned a controlling interest in Warren's collapsing empire, but still no sign of Delaney. "She's in Chicago," Clover finally told him after endless days of searching, starting her own law firm, being magnificent, because that's who she is. Vance stared at the photo on his tablet. Delaney, outside a sleek office building, looking tired but determined. The Chicago skyline rose behind her, so different from the Manhattan views they'd shared. "She hasn't been sleeping," he observed, noting the shadows under her eyes, even in the grainy surveillance photo. "Has she seen the news?" "Hard to miss," Cove replied, pulling up headlines on her screens. "Warren's arrest is everywhere. The whole story. Your father's murder, the failed takeover, Thompson's confession. She knows." "Then why hasn't she come back?" Julian cleared his throat carefully. "Maybe because you haven't asked her to." The words hit Vance like a physical blow. He'd been so focused on destroying Warren, on avenging his father and clearing Delaney's name, that he hadn't actually reached out to her. Pride and pain had held him back, making him wait for her to make the first move. "She's protecting you still," Clover said softly. "Staying away so the press can't spin it as a scandal, so the shareholders can't question your judgment. To hell with that." Vance stood abruptly, decision made. "Get the helicopter ready." "Sir?" His assistant's voice was hesitant. "There's a board meeting scheduled." "Cancel it. Cancel everything." He was already moving, stripping off his tie as plans formed. "Julian, you're in charge until I get back. Heath, finish gutting Warren's company. Cove, I need coordinates for that building in Chicago. And Clover, ... "Already drafting the press release," she smiled. "Go get our girl." The next hours passed in a blur of motion. His pilot complained about the weather. A snowstorm was moving in, making the flight dangerous. Vance didn't care. He'd waited too long already, let pride and pain and propriety keep him from the woman he loved. The Chicago skyline appeared through the snow, lit up against the winter sky. His pilot found a landing pad atop the city's tallest building, though the wind made it treacherous. "Ms. Blackwood's office is on the 45th floor of the building 2 blocks south," Cove's voice came through his earpiece. "Security shows she's still there." Of course she was still working, his brilliant, unstoppable warrior queen, building something new from the ashes of what they'd lost. The thought made his heart ache as he strode through the snow toward her building. The security guard tried to stop him, but one look at Vance Sterling's expression made him step aside. The elevator ride felt endless, each floor bringing him closer to the moment of truth. When the doors opened on the 45th floor, he found himself in a space that was pure Delaney, elegant, professional, but with hints of warmth in the art on the walls and the comfortable chairs in the waiting area. Her name was on the door in simple gold letters, Blackwood Legal Services. He didn't knock. Some moments didn't require permission. She looked up from her desk as he entered, unsurprised. Subtle as always, Mr. Sterling. His heart stopped at the sight of her. She'd lost weight, and her usual perfect posture showed signs of strain. But her eyes, God, her eyes still held that fire that had first made him fall in love. "Marry me." The pen dropped from her fingers. "What?" "Marry me," he repeated, crossing the room in long strides. "I don't care about the company. I don't care about the board. I don't care about anything but you. You fought for me, protected me, sacrificed everything to bring my father's killer to justice. Now let me fight for you." "Vance." Her voice broke slightly. "The shareholders can go to hell." He reached her desk, planting his hands on the polished wood. "You want to know what I learned about power, watching my empire almost crumble? Real power isn't in controlling everything. It's in knowing what matters enough to risk everything for." Tears spilled down her cheeks. "I'm so sorry. I should have told you what Warren did, what I was trying to prove." "No." He rounded the desk, pulling her to her feet. "You were protecting me like you always have. But I'm done being protected. I'm done letting anything keep us apart." "The press will talk," she whispered, but her hands came up to clutch his jacket. "Let them talk." His thumbs brushed away her tears. "Every newspaper in the country can run the headline, 'CEO madly in love with brilliant lawyer who saved his company and avenged his father.' I don't care anymore." A watery laugh escaped her. "Madly in love?" "Completely." He pressed his forehead to hers. "Desperately, permanently. Marry me, Delaney. Come home." "Home?" Her eyes searched his. "To New York?" "Home to me." His voice was rough with emotion. "To our life together. To everything we were too afraid to fight for before." She was quiet for a long moment, and he felt every second like a lifetime. Then, finally, she smiled. That brilliant, unstoppable smile that had first turned his world upside down. "Yes." The word was barely out before he kissed her, pouring months of longing and pain and love into the contact. She melted against him, fitting perfectly in his arms, like she'd never left them. When they finally broke apart, snow was falling harder outside her windows, turning Chicago into a winter wonderland. But Vance only had eyes for the woman in his arms. "Let's go home," he murmured against her hair. "Now?" She glanced at her desk, still covered in work. "In this storm?" "Now." He smiled, the expression transforming his face. "I have a helicopter waiting, a board to shock, and a very expensive engagement ring burning a hole in my pocket. And I'm done wasting time being afraid of how much I love you." She laughed then, the sound pure joy. "You really are terrible at subtle, Mr. Sterling. Good thing I'm marrying a lawyer who can handle all the delicate negotiations." He kissed her again, because he could, because she was finally his. Ready to scandalize Manhattan society? Her answering smile was pure Delaney, brilliant and unstoppable. Lead the way, my love." As they left her office hand in hand, the snow erased their footprints, cleaning the slate for a new beginning. They had battles ahead, the press, the shareholders, the whispers and doubts. But this time they would face them together, stronger for everything they'd overcome. Sometimes the greatest power isn't in controlling everything, but in being brave enough to let love take control instead. Chapter 11. Grand Gestures. The Chicago snowstorm had grounded every commercial flight, turning the city's skyscrapers into ghostly shadows in the swirling white. But Vance Sterling's private helicopter, cut through the weather like destiny itself, couldn't wait for them to get home. "You're insane!" Delaney shouted over the roar of the rotors, clutching his hand as they raced through the snow toward the waiting aircraft. "We could fly tomorrow when it's safe." "I've spent enough tomorrows without you." His voice in her headset was determined as they lifted off, the city disappearing beneath them. "Besides, I have plans for us tonight." She raised an eyebrow, taking in his mysterious smile. "Plans that require risking our lives in a snowstorm. Plans that require making a statement." He squeezed her hand, his thumb brushing over where his ring would soon rest. "One that all of Manhattan will hear." The flight was turbulent but swift, their pilot expertly navigating through the winter storm. As they approached New York, the clouds parted just enough to reveal Sterling Tower rising like a beacon against the darkness. "What ... Delaney's voice trailed off as she saw it. The entire facade of the building was lit up, forming words visible for miles. "Welcome home, Delaney. I love you. V, you ridiculous man." Her voice cracked with emotion. "The whole city can see that. That's the point." He lifted her hand to his lips. "I'm done hiding how I feel about you. Let everyone see, let them talk, let them know that the mighty Vance Sterling is completely, publicly, irrevocably in love with you." The helicopter landed on Sterling Tower's private helipad, where a small group waited despite the bitter cold. Julian stood with Heath and Cove, while Clover directed a small army of media crews setting up cameras. "Subtle," Delaney laughed through her tears as they emerged from the helicopter. "Very subtle." "Oh, he's not done yet," Cove grinned, hugging her friend fiercely. "Wait until you see what's inside." The elevator ride to the executive floor was filled with reunions and tears as their friends welcomed her home. But when the doors opened, Delaney gasped. The entire floor had been transformed into a wonderland of white roses and twinkling lights. The path to Vance's office was lined with photographs, every moment of their story captured in images. Their first meeting in the lobby, their victory celebration after the Pacific Tech deal, the charity gala where they'd danced too close, the terrace where they'd first kissed. "How did you—" she started. "Turns out, when you're hunting for evidence of corporate espionage, you find a lot of surveillance photos," Julian explained with a wink. "We thought it was time these moments told the real story." They reached Vance's office, now cleared of the destruction from his grief-fueled rage. Instead, projected on the floor-to-ceiling windows, was a video montage of their journey. Every smile, every heated glance, every moment they'd tried to hide their growing love. "I was so blind," Vance said softly, watching their story unfold against the Manhattan skyline. "So focused on protecting the company, on maintaining control, that I almost lost the best thing that ever happened to me." "We both made mistakes." Delaney turned to face him, her hands coming up to frame his face. "We both tried to protect each other instead of fighting together." "Never again." His voice was fierce as he pulled her closer. "From now on, we face everything together. No more secrets, no more sacrifices, no more putting the company before us." "Speaking of the company," Clover interrupted gently, "the press is waiting in the main conference room. Everything's ready." Delaney's eyes widened. "The press." "Like I said," Vance smiled, taking her hand, I'm done hiding." The conference room was packed with reporters and cameras, all buzzing with speculation about the dramatic light display and late-night gathering. Vance led Delaney to the podium, never letting go of her hand. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, his CEO voice carrying effortlessly through the room. "Thank you for coming at such a late hour. I have several announcements to make." The room fell silent, cameras flashing as he continued. "First, as you may have heard, Silas Warren has been arrested for the murder of my father, James Sterling. The evidence that led to his arrest was gathered over months of careful investigation by one person, Delaney Blackwood, who risked everything to bring my father's killer to justice." Murmurs rippled through the crowd as cameras turned to Delaney. "Second, Sterling Enterprises has acquired controlling interest in Warren Industries. Ms. Blackwood will be returning to her position as Chief Legal Officer to oversee the merger and restructuring." More cameras flashed, reporters shouting questions. Vance held up a hand for silence. "And finally," he turned to face Delaney, his voice softening, "I'm announcing my engagement to the most brilliant, courageous, extraordinary woman I've ever known. The woman who taught me that real power isn't in controlling everything, but in being brave enough to let love take control instead." Gasps and exclamations filled the room as Vance dropped to one knee, pulling out a ring that caught the light like captured stars. "Delaney Blackwood," his voice carried clearly despite the chaos, "you stormed into my lobby and changed my life. You challenged me, protected me, saved me from myself. You fought for justice when everyone else had given up. You loved me enough to walk away to protect me. Now I'm asking you to stay forever. Marry me?" Tears streamed down her face as she looked at this powerful man on his knees before the world's media, declaring his love without reservation. "Yes," she whispered, then louder for the cameras. "Yes!" The room erupted in applause and camera flashes as Vance slid the ring onto her finger and pulled her into a kiss that would make headlines across the globe. But neither of them noticed, lost in their own perfect moment. "I love you," he murmured against her lips. "Every ambitious, brilliant, unstoppable inch of you." "I love you too," she smiled through her tears, "even when you're being ridiculously dramatic with city-sized light displays and press conferences. Get used to it." He kissed her again, uncaring of the cameras. "I plan to spend the rest of my life making grand gestures to show the world how much I love you." Their friends watched from the sidelines, tears and joy mixing freely. The press would have their story tomorrow. The powerful CEO and the brilliant lawyer who brought down an empire for love. The shareholders would talk, the board would adjust, and Manhattan society would buzz with speculation. But none of it mattered. They had fought their way back to each other, stronger for every battle, every sacrifice, every moment of doubt. Now they stood together before the world, ready to build something even more powerful than an empire. A love story for the ages. The snow continued to fall outside, blanketing the city in white, as if nature itself was celebrating their reunion. And in the heart of Sterling Tower, two people who had risked everything for love finally found their way home. Chapter 12. Power Couples. Manhattan sparkled under a perfect June sky as Sterling Tower prepared for the wedding that would reshape the city's power structure forever. The same building that had witnessed their first meeting, their first kiss, their struggles and triumphs, now stood ready to host their ultimate victory. A celebration of love over corporate politics, truth over power, heart over control. Delaney stood before the mirror in her private office, now transformed into a bridal suite. Her wedding dress wasn't the traditional white. She'd chosen molten gold, a color that made her dark skin glow like sunlit bronze and caught the light with every movement. The designer had woven real gold thread through the intricate patterns, making her shine like a living flame. Her braids were crowned with diamonds and gold threads, creating a regal effect that put any corporate title to shame. You look like a warrior queen, Cove whispered, adjusting the train. Which is exactly what you are. A queen who brought down an empire for love, Clover added, dabbing at her eyes. The press is already calling it the greatest love story in corporate history. Delaney touched the delicate golden locket at her throat, a gift from Vance that morning. Inside was a tiny photo of his father, James Sterling, alongside a handwritten note. He would have loved you as much as I do. Thank you for bringing his killer to justice and his son back to life. A knock at the door revealed Julian, looking unusually emotional in his best man's suit. It's time, he said softly. And Delaney, you should see him up there. I've known Vance Sterling for 20 years, and I've never seen him like this. Nervous? She asked, gathering her bouquet of white roses and gold orchids. No, Julian smiled, at peace, like everything in his life was leading him to this moment, to you. The atrium of Sterling Tower had been transformed into a cathedral of light and flowers. 3,000 white roses cascaded from ceiling-high arrangements, their scent mixing with the subtle gold frankincense burning in crystal censers. The evening sun streamed through the glass walls, turning everything to molten gold, as if the universe itself approved of this union. The most powerful people in the business world filled the seats, alongside the employees who'd witnessed their love story unfold. But when the music began and Delaney appeared at the top of the grand staircase, there was only one person she saw. Vance Sterling, the man who'd built an empire on control and precision, had tears in his eyes as he watched his bride descend. He wore a black tuxedo with subtle gold accents to match her dress. But it was his expression that caught everyone's attention, pure, undisguised love, without a trace of his usual corporate mask. "You're staring," she whispered when she reached him, an echo of their first meeting in the lobby 2 years ago. "I'll be staring at you for the rest of my life," he promised, taking her hands in his. "My warrior queen, my heart." Their vows made headlines the next day, but neither cared about the press anymore. They'd earned the right to declare their love to the world. "I, Vance Sterling," his voice carried through the hushed atrium, "take you, Delaney Blackwood, as my partner in all things. You stormed into my life and taught me that true strength isn't in controlling everything, but in being brave enough to let love lead. When I was lost in power and control, you showed me what real courage looks like. You fought for justice when I was blind to it, protected me when I was too proud to see the danger, and loved me enough to walk away when you thought it would save me. I promise to spend the rest of my life being worthy of that love, to face every challenge by your side, and to never again let pride or fear keep me from telling the world that you are the best thing that ever happened to me." Tears sparkled in Delaney's eyes as she spoke her own vows. "I, Delaney Blackwood, take you, Vance Sterling, as my partner in all things. You saw me not just as a brilliant lawyer, but as a woman worthy of moving mountains for. When the world tried to tear us apart, you moved heaven and earth to bring us back together. You taught me that sometimes the greatest victory isn't in fighting alone, but in letting someone fight beside you. I promise to be your warrior queen and your safe harbor, to challenge you when you need challenging and support you when you need supporting, and to love you with the same fierce devotion that brought down an empire and brought us home to each other." In his prison cell, Silas Warren watched the coverage on a tiny TV, seeing his empire crumble as the couple he'd tried to destroy celebrated their triumph. The evidence Delaney had gathered ensured he would spend the next 20 years contemplating how his attempt to destroy them had only made them stronger. The reception was legendary, Manhattan's elite mingling with employees from every level of Sterling Enterprises, all equal in their celebration of a love that had transformed the city's most powerful company. "Mrs. Sterling Blackwood," Vance murmured as they shared their first dance. "That has a nice ring to it." Mr. Sterling Blackwood, she countered with a smile that lit up the room. The board nearly had a collective heart attack when we announced we were both changing our names. Let them adjust. He pulled her closer as they moved across the floor to their song. They've already accepted that their CEO and CLO are madly in love. What's one more corporate revolution? Later that night, they slipped away to their private terrace, the same one where they'd first kissed, where everything had changed. The city sparkled below them, a testament to the empire they'd built and protected together. Happy? Vance asked, wrapping his arms around his wife as they looked out over their domain. Beyond happy. She leaned back against his chest, their matching wedding rings catching the starlight. Though I'm still not sure about the billboard. He grinned unrepentantly at the massive digital display on a neighboring building, which had been cycling through their love story all day. Currently, it showed the moment from his proposal, when he'd dropped to one knee in front of the world's media. I told you I'd spend my life making grand gestures, he reminded her, kissing her temple. Get used to it, my love. Their phones buzzed simultaneously, because even on their wedding night, empires needed tending. But the message from Julian made them both smile. Your office is ready for Monday, though maybe take a honeymoon first. The image showed their shared office, now with matching nameplates. Vance Sterling Blackwood, CEO, and Delaney Sterling Blackwood, CLO and co-CEO. Co-CEO? Her eyes widened with joy. When did that happen? Board approved it this morning. Unanimous vote. He turned her in his arms to face him. Turns out having the brilliant lawyer who brought down Silas Warren as an equal partner inspires confidence in shareholders. Equal partner, she tested the words. I like that. You were always my equal, he said seriously, framing her face with his hands. I just needed you to teach me that power isn't about control. It's about trust and courage and being strong enough to let love change everything. Monday morning came soon enough. As Delaney settled into her new office, equal in size and position to her husband's, with a connecting door always open between them, she found a note on her desk in Vance's bold handwriting. To my warrior queen, thank you for teaching me that the greatest power isn't in controlling everything, but in being brave enough to lose control. Thank you for fighting for justice, for our love, for everything we've built together. But mostly, thank you for storming into my lobby and refusing to take no for an answer. You are my greatest victory, my strongest ally, and my truest love. Together, we'll build something even greater than an empire. A legacy of love that will outlast any corporate merger. Forever yours, Vance. She smiled, picked up her pen, and got back to work. They had an empire to run. Together. And in the years that followed, Manhattan would tell their story of the powerful CEO who learned to let love take control, and the brilliant lawyer who fought for justice and won his heart. Of how they transformed Sterling Blackwood Enterprises into a testament to their love, proving that the greatest power comes not from controlling everything, but from being brave enough to let love lead the way. The end.
Thanks for watching!